Welcome to the 8th ESG Webcast on CBAM, in which we present the European Union's new carbon border adjustment mechanism. My name is Bernhard Winkelbauer, and together with my colleague Marina Mittermaier,
hello,
we will be taking you through this TPA webcast today. Before we start with our exciting topic, we would of course be particularly pleased if you would subscribe to our channel to stay informed about new episodes of Let's Go ESG. Let me start with an overview of the topic. As part of the CBAM regulation, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, or CBAM for short, was created as an additional climate protection instrument in the European Union. As part of the Fit for 55 package, CBAM is intended to make a significant contribution to the EU's plan to reduce net greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% by 2030. The Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism complements the EU emissions trading system by establishing a CO2 pricing level comparable to that of the EU for the import of certain CO2-intensive products from non-EU countries, so third countries. CBAM thus prices the greenhouse gas emissions of certain goods imported from third countries. On the one hand, this counters the risk of carbon leakage, so the risk of shifting CO2 emissions to non-EU countries with less strict climate regulations, and on the other hand, creates an incentive for producers in third countries to reduce emissions in their manufacturing process. The CO2 border adjustment mechanism will be implemented in two phases: the transitional phase, which began on October 1st, 2023, and the definitive regime, which will start at the beginning of 2026. During the transitional phase, importers of CBAM goods are not yet obliged to purchase CBAM certificates. However, affected importers are subject to reporting obligations. Before we go into the phases in more detail, Marina, will you explain what and who is affected by CBAM?
Yeah. As my colleague Bernhard has already mentioned, CBAM serves to support the European emissions trading system and relates to the import of CO2-intense products from non-European Union countries. So far, CBAM is limited to the import of cement, iron and steel, aluminium, fertilizers and electricity, each in pure or processed form originating in a third country. A complete list of the products initially within the scope of CBAM can be found in Annex 1 of the CBAM regulation, to which we have provided a link in the video description. Looking at the example shown on the slides, you can see an excerpt of the goods listed by CN code that fall under the cement product group. 3 greenhouse gases are covered by the CBAM reporting: carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide and perfluorocarbons. The only exceptions apply to the deliveries not exceeding a value of 150 euros for goods, which a value of up to 150 euros contained in the personal luggage of travelers coming from a third country, and for goods to be moved or used in the context of military activities. As participants in the European emission trading systems are not covered by CBAM, goods originating in Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, Switzerland, Büsingen, Helgoland, Livigno, Ceuta and Melilla are also not within the scope of CBAM. Next, Bernhard will give us a brief overview of the transition phase and the reporting obligations.
With pleasure, Marina. The transitional phase began last year on October 1st and ends on December 31st, 2025. As already mentioned, no CBAM certificates have to be purchased during the transitional phase, so there will be no pricing of greenhouse gas emissions until the beginning of 2026. However, importers of CBAM goods are subject to a documentation and reporting obligation. For example, importers or indirect customs representatives, should they agree, are obliged to submit a quarterly CBAM report. If the importer is not established in an EU member state, an indirect customs representative is mandatory and the CBAM reporting obligations are transferred to them. The CBAM report must contain the following information in particular: the total quantity of each type of goods expressed in megawatt hours for electricity and in tons for other goods, specified for each installation producing the goods in the country of origin. the total direct and indirect emissions in tons of CO2 emissions per unit of goods, and the carbon price due in the country of origin for the emissions associated with the imported goods, taking into account any available export refund or other form of compensation. The calculation of CO2 emissions from CBAM goods, which is based heavily on the methodology of the European Emissions Trading System, is therefore a key component of the quarterly CBAM reports. Some simplifications are planned for the transitional phase. For example, default values published by the European Commission can be used for the calculation until July 31st, 2024, with justification as to why no actual data can be used. In addition, during the transitional phase, importers will be able to apply for the authorized declarant status from 1st of January 2025, although this status will only become mandatory from 2026 onwards. Marina, could you please tell us something about deadlines, report audits and sanctions?
Yes, certainly. The quarterly CBAM reports must be uploaded to the European online platform, also known as the Transitional Registry, no later than 1 month after the end of the quarter. This means that the first CBAM report on imports in the fourth quarter of 2023 was already due on the 31st of January 2024, and the second CBAM report on imports in the first quarter of 2024 was due on 30th of April 2024. The third CBAM report has been submitted at the end of July 2024. For the first report, it was possible to apply for a 30-day extension of the submission deadline. If a report has already been submitted one time, changes and corrections can be made up to 1 month after the CBAM report submission deadline. In addition, the CBAM report can still be corrected within 1 year after the deadline of the request is justified. The first 2 CBAM reports can still be amended and corrected until the 31st of July 2024, for example, until the deadline for the third CBAM report. The uploaded CBAM reports are subject to an audit. The European Commission compares the customs data with the reports, and in the event of missing, incomplete or incorrect CBAM reports, a correction procedure is initiated, which is handled by the National Amt für den Nationalen Emissionszertifikatehandel, integrated in the Austrian Customs Office. This national authority has the possibility to impose sanctions in case of non-submission of the CBAM report or in case of an incorrect or incomplete CBAM report, which can amount between 10 and 50 euros for each ton of unreported greenhouse gas emissions. Last but not least, Bernhard, could you tell us about the pricing phase?
With pleasure, Marina. The pricing phase will start on January 1st, 2026, when authorized declarants will also be obliged to purchase CBAM certificates for the greenhouse gas emissions generated during the production of the imported goods. For this date, the import of CBAM goods into the customs territory of the European Union will only be permitted for such authorized declarants. During the year, they must also prove that sufficient CBAM certificates have been acquired. No detailed information is yet available regarding the calculation of the price for CBAM certificates. However, they are likely based on the weekly average price of the EU emission trading system at the time of the introduction. If too many certificates have been purchased, they can generally be returned at the original purchase price. And if importers can prove that the carbon price has already been paid during the production of the imported goods, the corresponding amount can be deducted. In addition, during the pricing phase, the submission of quarterly CBAM reports during the transitional phase will be replaced by an annual CBAM declaration for the previous calendar year. This CBAM declaration must be submitted by May 31st of each year, so the first one is due in 2027. For imports, in 2026. The content and structure of the CBAM declaration will presumably be based on that of the CBAM reports.
This brings us to the end of our brief insight into CBAM. If you have any questions about CBAM reporting, we would be delighted to hear from you. You are also very welcome to take a look at our other webcasts on the various topics relating to ESG or tax and corporate law issues, such as the webcast regarding to the new IFRS 18 standard. If you enjoyed this webcast, we look forward to seeing you again in the next webcast. Thanks a lot and goodbye.
Goodbye.